Welcome to the Jaron Jarvis channel. I am Jaron Jarvis. Today, I would like to introduce to you, the Mass. I know if I open my eyes it's over. I know if I acknowledge the presence paralyzing my body within the warm sheets of my bed, that I will pay the ultimate price. 3 weeks ago, my nightmare began. It was a normal summer Saturday in Texas. Hot as hell, my skin seemingly liquefying as punishment for leaving the cool embrace of my AC. I always hated August in Texas. Cooped up in the house, too bored to want to stay and too hot to want to leave. My wife napped beside me, half naked in the hopes of staying cool. I was awake and watching movies on my phone with headphones, so as not to wake her. It was boring, but God, what I wouldn't give for boring again. We had plans to meet friends for dinner that night. At least at night, we could find a restaurant patio with a gentle breeze and some ceiling fans running at full blast. I awoke my wife from her deep slumber when it was time to start getting ready for the night's activities. She always took naps that resemble sleep for most people. In a daze, she rolled out of bed and began to dress for dinner, and I did the same. She wore a pink and yellow floral print dress with flat sandals and her light brown hair draped over her shoulders like curtains over a window and no makeup. The picture of perfection. I was always telling her how she was naturally beautiful. I wore my finest khaki cargo shorts with a vibrant Hawaiian button-up and black and white Converse. I was far beneath my wife's league, but for some reason she picked me to spend her life with, a decision she will forever regret. Dinner was great that night. We went to a slightly upscale Latin place with live music and great food, at prices that said management knew they were great. Our friends caught us up on their work and recent vacation, and we shared stories of our travels to work and the grocery store. We didn't lead exciting lives. We ate, we drank, some of us danced, myself excluded. This place was in an older part of town, not where you would typically expect to find a lively Latin restaurant. Buildings with paint peeling, bricks missing, some even with roofs caved in. All on the same street as this modern, loud, busy restaurant. The only downfall was parking. Because it was in an older area, unless you got there early in the evening, you usually had to park a couple blocks down, as was the case this night. We happened to park in the back of the building with the sunken roof. As the building itself was condemned, parking was free. No one really cared if we chose to park here, given the risk of nails, broken glass, and scattered debris. Walking back to the car, we were still laughing, probably at something stupid I said that would normally warrant an eye roll. Alcohol really is fantastic for those of us with terrible jokes. It was near pitch black outside, with this part of the block not being well lit, and we stumbled up to our car. I opened my wife's door and helped her inside. As I walked around the back end of our black sedan, I glanced up aimlessly at the forgotten structure. Floating in the only doorway still upright was a dark mass. Darker than the night surrounding it. I didn't really believe what I saw. Surely this is just the alcohol, I told myself, choosing to believe the thought. As I entered the driver's side door and started the engine, my eyes were drawn back to that doorway, the mass still present. It felt as though it was watching me, beckoning me to come forward. I flicked on the headlights and intentionally backed up to shine light on the doorway and calm my nerves. Sure enough, with headlights beaming down, it was nothing but an empty doorway. Goddamn alcohol, I cursed under my breath, all the while knowing I had only had 2 beers. The next couple of days went off without a hitch. Sunday was filled with more napping, cleaning, and prepping lunches for the upcoming work week. I mowed our yard and watered in some fertilizer. My wife bathed our large yellow Labrador retriever and then herself, because, well, dogs like to shake when wet. Monday was a typical Monday. Dull and monotonous, dragging on until the sweet release of 5 p.m. crawled around the clock. Tuesday morning arrived and I grudgingly pulled myself out of bed and dressed for work. Our house sat across the street from our community center, which did not open until 8 a.m. I shuffled outside to grab our mail from the previous day, as I never remembered to bring it in the day it was delivered. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, giving the sky the slightest tint of morning red. A few clouds were drifting through the air, and a warm summer breeze blew against my face. As I walked back inside to eat some breakfast before heading to work, I looked up and down the street to see if any of my neighbors were coming out of their langar. As my eyes scanned back up my street, I spied our community center. A big archway towered over the French doors leading into the offices and fitness center. There in the archway was the same dark mass, hovering about 3 feet off the ground. I dropped the mail, startled, and rubbed my eyes vigorously. This can't be real, I told myself, my heart now racing. As I blinked furiously to ensure my vision was not obstructed by exhaustion, came to the realization that this was not alcohol and this was not sleep. This was real. This was terrifying. I hadn't noticed Saturday night due to the extreme darkness that this was more than a mass. It was a figure. It almost looked like a human, but its shoulders were distorted at sharp angles, its head long and thin like a cucumber, and its legs appearing to be cut off at the knees. I scooped my mail off the pavement with a great briskness and ran inside. I don't know what this was or why it was starting to appear to me, but I had never felt such a threatening presence like this before. I don't know how I knew, but it wanted me to come over, to introduce myself. If I did meet it, something horrendous was going to happen. I made my way to work, but was far from productive. My heart didn't stop racing until close to lunchtime. When I made a stop by the bathroom, I looked over my appearance while washing my hands and realized I looked like a wreck. My shirt was very loosely tucked into my slacks, my hair pulled in all directions like I should have been wearing a tinfoil hat, and my skin flush. I wasn't myself at dinner that night either. I hardly said 2 words to my wife while only pushing my food around the plate. After she went to bed, I made my way back to the front of the house. I was frightened more than ever, but I had to see if this thing was back. I know it's stupid, but I needed to find out, if possible, what it wanted. I sat in my front room recliner staring out the window until almost 1 a.m. when I witnessed it form once again. This time though it was right outside my window. Only seconds passed, but it felt like hours. Time had stopped while I locked eyes with the mass of a figure. A portion of the shadow plunged forward into my window and into my chest. I felt my eyes widen with fear and I let out a scream. But no noise escaped my throat. I had no air as I felt it squeezing my lungs with a vice grip. There was no light anywhere, except at the very end of the street, yet I could see the brightest light right in front of my face. I knew this was it. A million thoughts raced in my head. How do I get away? What did I do to deserve this end? Will my wife know that I didn't mean to leave her? What will an autopsy show have killed me? Will I know peace or do I have an eternity of torment waiting for me on the other side? The light grew brighter and brighter. I could finally see past the light and there was nothing. It was black. I was now starting to believe that heaven and hell were pipe dreams. There was nothing waiting for me. I was going to disappear from this life and cease to exist, living as only a memory for my wife. I could feel my body beginning to lose its fight, struggling against the figure less and less. This was it. And then like the flip of a switch, I was back in my front room, gasping for air on the floor at the foot of my recliner. Disoriented, I pulled myself up from the floor and peeked out the window to see what happened. An SUV with those unforgiving halogens had driven up the street and simultaneously triggered my neighbor's motion-activated driveway floodlights. I scrambled to shut my blinds and crawled into my bedroom, where my wife lay peacefully motionless, her chest raising and falling gently, the sole exception. She had no idea what had just happened, that I almost disappeared from her life. I continued past our bed, into our bathroom, into our walk-in closet, and shut the door softly behind me. With the last bit of energy I could muster, I rolled into a corner and quietly wept. I don't know how long I was there, but the next thing I knew, my wife was kneeling over me, shaking me awake. Honey, wake up. Why did you sleep in here last night? What happened? Where am I? I questioned in a stupor. You're in the closet. When I got up to get ready for work, I found you in here snoring. Why did you sleep in here last night? She repeated with concern enveloping her voice and her eyes. I don't remember. I remember falling asleep in the front room and having this awful nightmare that I was dying, and then you woke me up. I answered as I began to gather myself and stand up to exit. I'm so sorry that happened. Are you okay? You look pale as a ghost. Yeah, I think I'm okay, but my neck and back are a little sore. With that statement, the day began as normal. Get dressed, check the mail, purposefully avoiding looking at the center across the street, eat and go to work. The day passed as any typical Wednesday does. The stereotypical office tool walking around wishing everyone a happy hump day and co-workers beginning to make plans for the weekend. I threw myself into my work, trying to forget last night. I drove home in light traffic, had an excellent grilled chicken dinner and got ready for bed. I was terrified for nighttime, but it was coming regardless. I fought falling asleep, but was eventually drained of energy and passed out. My eyes blinked open and I glanced at the clock. It glowed a soft red on my nightstand and read 3:17 a.m. I turned my body over to sleep on my left side and noticed my wife was not in bed. I turned back over to see if she was in the bathroom. The light would normally spill into our bedroom in the crack under the door, but it was dark. This was very unusual for her and I started to worry. I clicked my side lamp on and looked back into the room. When I saw her, I screamed her name at the top of my lungs. Amber. She was pinned against the wall in front of our bed, lifted 3 or 4 feet in the air and swiping at her throat. Unlike the previous night, the light did not seem to be helping her. I hurled myself out of bed and bear hugged her body to pull her away from the wall. It was at this point that I realized she wasn't against the wall, but floating in midair. Her eyes were starting to look bloodshot, rolling into the back of her head, tears streaming down her face. I could see and shared her fear. Remembering the night before, I knew if I was going to have a shot at saving her, I had to floodlight into the room. I'll be right back, I yelled as I let go of her body and ran through the house. I didn't want to leave her, but I wasn't going to let her die. I glanced back over my shoulder and she was still just hanging in the air, her body refusing to obey the laws of gravity. I caught sight of a dark something sticking out of the wall, wrapped around her neck. We enjoyed camping in Colorado on our air vacations, so I knew we had some equipment in the garage. Throwing different items out of the way, I finally found our camping light, one of those that has light all the way around and could light a campsite. I sprinted back into the bedroom, flipping every light on that I passed, including the ceiling fan light. I clicked the camp light on and tossed it at her feet. A split second later, she was crumbled on the floor, sobbing and heaving in as much air as her lungs would allow. No words were spoken. We were both shaken, disturbed, and petrified. I laid on the ground holding her in my arms until we both had fallen asleep. The following morning, I told her everything that had happened to me. That it hadn't been a nightmare and that I should have been honest with her. Understandably, she didn't feel safe and informed me that she would be sleeping at her parents' house for a few nights, until we could figure out what was happening and how to get rid of it. That brings us full circle back to tonight. I have spent the last couple weeks contacting exorcists and psychics for advice on what to do. A couple have offered to come out and either contact the figure or exorcise the house, but they haven't made it yet. I have had every window to our house shut, the blinds closed, and the curtains drawn before darkness descends on our part of the earth. I was asleep for the last 4 hours, but adrenaline woke me up. I won't open my eyes. When I fell asleep, all the lights in my house were turned off, yet I can tell light is burning through my shut eyelids. I'm finding it hard to catch my breath, yet I won't open my eyes. I know how this night ends if I do. The light just disappeared. I can breathe again. But there is nothing but darkness around me. I go to stand up, but find I'm already on my feet. I walk towards my bedroom door to turn on the light, but I can't find it. In fact, I can't find anything in my room, my bed, my television, my bathroom doors. I seem to be completely turned around in the pitch black. Without warning I hear Amber scream and it seems to be right behind me. I spin around but can't find her in the dark. She's screaming my name and crying, that snorting kind of crying. Amber, what's wrong? I yell, so she can hear me over her own sobs, but receive no response. Just more tears, more wailing. Please come back. She shrieks, to which I respond, I'm right here, just stick your arms out. But again, no response. More helpless weeping. In the distance, I can make out a figure. It's darker than dark, like staring into nothingness. Its head long and slender like a cucumber, legs cut off at the knees. It glides over to me, so close that I can finally make out its face. Its eyes are a deep red, high cheekbones, and a smile of jagged, sharp, off-center teeth that extends from ear to ear. I can vaguely make out loose hanging skin, but it doesn't look like it belongs on his face. No nose, no forehead or chin. In a deep, drawn-out voice, his smile opens and informs, she will mourn you, she will remember you, and she will move on from you. As of now, you are mine. As he spits the last of his sentence at me, his creepy smile returns. I see his arm extend out behind him and a doorway reveals itself. I'm frozen, struggling to comprehend what is happening, when he wraps his unwanted arm around my shoulder and forces me into the doorway, to my eternity.